Hi, I'm Dr. Joanne McDonald, and I'm with the Mother's Mental Health Toolkit Project with the Reproductive Mental Health Service at the IWK Health Center in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Welcome to another in our series of PowerPoint video learning modules. This is one in a series we call Meet Our Mom, and we're going to explore the story of one mom and how her experience demonstrates the role of community service providers in mothers' mental health. So as a community service provider to mothers and young families, we're interested in how you can create opportunities to promote and support mothers' mental health in your work. As you well know, a mother's positive mental health promotes the development of her child in both the physical growth and health and their self-esteem, confidence and skill in learning, but also important to mental health in childhood and later in life is their emotional regulation and relationship success. So in this series, Meet Our Mom, the Mother's Mental Health Toolkit Project team will introduce you to case descriptions drawn from the real experiences of our mental health clinicians and from our Family Resource Center partner staffs. These moms have common presentations and problems that will challenge you to define your possible role and the contributions to her well-being. The moms will also provide examples of how you might use some of the toolkit resources in your work. It helps if you have a copy of the toolkit out for reference as we begin to meet our moms. You could also print off this presentation as a handout and make notes as you go. So let's talk first about Lana. Our mom Lana is a 17-year-old student, and she's 20 weeks into an unplanned pregnancy for her. She's living in public housing with her mother and her younger sister. Her father has left the family 5 years before, and the family immigrated to Canada about 10 years ago from the current time. So Lana is referred to your center by her school nurse, who's heard about verbal conflict with a boyfriend in the common areas, and comments from other girlfriends who also visit the nurse's office who say, Lana is losing it. You are starting a new support program for teen mothers and make the first outreach call to Lana. So during the telephone conversation with Lana, you learn that the pregnancy was indeed not planned, and in fact she's been hoping to go to community college next year. Her boyfriend at the time pressed her to terminate the pregnancy at the time initially, but had been now gradually kind of pulling away, avoiding her texts, partying more with his own independent friends. She says, I used to party on the weekends too, but of course I can't now because I'm pregnant. She says to you, I have to try to stay good for my baby, and I'm so tired and not much fun anymore, really. When you ask her about her peer relationships, particularly friendships with other teenage girls, she tells you, I can't count on those girls I used to hang with anymore anyway. And she sounds both sad and angry on the phone. So we want to get you thinking about your own center and community, and what do you think, just from this brief story and case vignette, what would 3 possible mental health issues be for Lana? Just jot them down. There's no right or wrong answer. It's what comes to mind for you. So the Toolkit Project team identified in Lana's story 3 possibilities. One to think about is that her peer relationships, of course, are changing because of how she feels physically in the pregnancy, because of the role change that's coming for her. And so she may be in a circumstance where her usual supports are rather low. She comments something about hormones making her mood worse, so it may be that she has had mood problems before, and you might want to know a little bit more about that. The third possibility is that she may have had previous substance use, the partying, as she puts it, on the weekends, as a coping behavior. And now that she's no longer using those substances, or even having the same sort of break in her week by out partying with friends, she may not have a new set of coping strategies to deal with her new circumstance. To get you thinking again, what would you like to know more about this mom? What would we need to know more about Lana to begin to work with her? Again, just take a few minutes to think about what your answers to this question might be. Here's what the Toolkit team wondered about. What is Lana's family's history of mental health problems? Well, father's mother, so her grandmother, was in hospital after one of her aunts was born. So a little bit of a hint that there might be some kind of a baby postpartum illness there. It's always been a bit of a family mystery, though, so Lana doesn't really know that much about it because she always got the sense that she shouldn't ask. And this, of course, is not unusual with the stigma people have felt, particularly in generations past, about experiencing a mental health problem. Her father has had a history of heavy alcohol misuse, and he's sober now, but as mentioned, he moved away after the parents separated, and she only has a bit of contact, maybe would see him once a year now. Mother has struggled with panic attacks in the past that get so severe in winter she may not leave the house for days. So sometimes she seems to do very well, and other times she really struggles with this sort of dramatic anxiety problem. And again, there seems to be a bit of a sense of a seasonal component to that. So Lana's risk of mood disorder may be higher than other teen mothers because her family has a history of other mental health problems that, look like they significantly impaired function and may have required formal treatment. The second thing we wondered about was, what were her usual coping strategies? Well, it sounds like when we inquire further with her that being with her girlfriends, talking, listening to music was her favorite way to relax. And now feeling outside of that social group, or at least putting herself outside of that social group currently, she's lost one of her important sources of sort of coping and reducing tension and stress. She was also a very good soccer player, and she liked to run hard at practice and run all her tensions out. And she's really noticing that with the sluggish way she feels in the pregnancy, being unable to join the team this year, she notices a big difference in how she feels within her body, and then secondarily how that affects her mood. She'd also smoke cannabis sometimes, but usually only on the weekends, so she hasn't found it hard to give up particularly, but it is part of that change in her social habits. So again, it does highlight that Lana's usual possible coping strategies may not be so easily deployed in pregnancy. The third thing we wondered about is how long has she been involved with the father of the baby, and what has the relationship been like for both of them? Well, we find out that really they've been off and on together over the past 2 years since they've both been 15. And in some ways, it sounds like Lana has wanted more of a commitment than that he has felt ready for or comfortable with. And in fact, she says at one time he said to her he wondered if she deliberately became pregnant to keep him closer to her. In fact, she says that wasn't a sort of conscious motivation for her, and that the pregnancies really disrupted her plans for school and how she saw her early adult life unfolding. She admits, though, that she can become easily very insecure in relationship and sees a lot of her sense of self-worth from her boyfriend's every comment and action. He gets frustrated and says critical things about her, but then he feels bad about it, but she says, I don't think he knows how to apologize. So it's possible that Lana may need more skills to communicate positively in relationships generally while still respecting her needs and her safety. What then could be the role for you and your organization in her mental health as a mother? We'll give you a minute again to think about what your 3 answers might be here. So possible roles and contributions that the toolkit team thought about was that the center, and particularly the teen program that you're looking to get started, would be a setting that isn't about family or friends and her past relationships and their expectations of her. It's common that people are disappointed to find out that a teen has become pregnant. It wasn't part of the plan for her or for her family around her. So your center and your setting may just provide her with a place that's without judgment and acceptance that she's having a difficult time with her moods, with how she's sort of thinking and responding to the reality of her pregnancy. It may also be a safe place to explore the risks and strengths regarding her mental illness risk that's just present for her, connect her well-being to her sense of being a good mother. And third, it might be an opportunity for a new avenue of social support with other teen mothers. Not that she's going to, end the relationship she's had with her long-standing friends who are not becoming mothers, but it might help provide a balance and a sense that she's not going to be sort of abandoned from the life of a teen altogether. How might you use the toolkit resource then with Lana or with other teen mothers? Well, look at pages 14 and 15. The self-care checklist can be a way to explore her past and present behaviors and priorities. So here on page 14 is an example of the self-care checklist. And in here, just a sample of how someone might respond to it. So under nutrition or food, do you think you're doing well? How are you doing now? This person rates it 2 as poorly. How important is this to you? Well, 5 is most important, so pretty important to this person. How would you help with this? How would you like help with this, sorry? And then what would you like that help to look back? And the answer here was my boyfriend to help me make some meals. So that's just a sample on the first page 14. On 15 is the blank form. And usually we would say that you'd introduce this with your mom and you would begin to sort of say to her, this is just a way to begin to kind of think about different aspects of wellness and self-care and kind of begin to sort of put some priorities or rating on them as to how it affects that particular woman. And get her thinking about how can I do better if it's something that is important to me and what kind of help would I need. So another thought here is that Lana used to have organized soccer practice and now is tired, worried about her growing body, and isn't getting out very much. So on page 27 of the toolkit, we have a small sheet that's about my exercise ideas. That could be a start to reconnecting her to her body health and positive coping strategy and exercise and the physical release of tension that isn't quite as aggressive as practicing and playing regularly on a competitive team. Many people who play team sports have not developed the other aspects of their own life in terms of fitness, in terms of relaxation, stretching, things that can be very important in pregnancy or for new moms. So here's the sheet, my exercise ideas, and it's something, again, either she could do herself, but often it helps to have the community support provider just kind of sit with her and go through this and say, well, what would be an activity idea? Where would you do it? Who would you do it with? For how long? Kind of put some specifics on it rather than say, well, you should just get some kind of exercise. Sometimes that's hard to follow through with. The changes and losses in relationships she's begun to talk about and her usual social supports being different has been already identified. So page 62 on You and Your Children, a support map, can be a flexible visual way of exploring current and possible new supports as she becomes a mother. Let's have a look at that. Very simple, puts her and her child or her unborn child in the center, and then you can look at, say, well, who else is around her and what kind of support could they provide? Sometimes people say, look, there's people that are too close to me, I'd like them to be a little further out, and there's other people or other kinds of supports that I would like to have. And this is really, can be used either to look at, one version could be the existing supports, and then you could do a second version which says this is what I'd like it to be like, and then a discussion can ensue about how do you get from what exists currently to what really the mom would be looking for. Relationships with the baby's father and her family support persons, for young mothers in particular, can often be a key to her stability in pregnancy in those first months of big change with a young infant. We find particularly that the young mother's own mother is an important relationship to support and explore and hopefully find the positive aspects of. So page 78 and 79 help you to recognize the problems anyone can have with positive communication at times of conflict and how to set realistic goals in any relationship at times of change and stress. So this is something mom would read. It's sort of some tips that come really from other mothers. It's not specific to young mothers, but again, we develop our communication patterns over time and experience in life. So sometimes it's helpful to really sit down and say, how do I manage this? These are other ways in which we learn to cope. Relationship planning, this one in particular says 2 copies, one for the woman and one for the partner, but you might just begin, you can use this really with any relationship, so you can use the sheet to talk about a teen mom and her own mother and that relationship rather than a boyfriend or a partner relationship. But it gets, again, us thinking a little bit with the woman, with the mom, about what are her relationship goals, and then what would be an action plan that would sort of match up sort of to those goals. And then there can be, again, a bit of a discussion of, you know, are they shooting for the moon? Is that sort of, is the goal to be like happy every day and know that we'll be together forever, which may be something you can have a conversation around, that may be a good goal and a very important goal to that woman, but it may be a little bit too big to even say, well, how do I begin to take action towards that? So sometimes that's a helpful strategy in itself. Did you see any other resources or exercises in the Mother's Mental Health Toolkit that you thought could help you with Lana, or use in the group you're developing? Maybe look through and write down the page numbers you might use. The intention with the toolkit is that it's a collection of resources and ideas and approach, and no one set of sheets is going to be applicable for every mom or for every situation. We really want to see you adapt this to your particular community and particular setting. Some key points, though, that we've learned when working with young mothers are that peer supports are very important at this stage of life, and it's very important to not diminish that and to recognize that they may be changing with pregnancy. It's important to kind of acknowledge and address the loss and then positively seek out other options for support. We try always to attempt to reduce the stigma around all teen mothers having problems and focus on what priorities this particular young woman identifies first. So not all teen moms struggle, not all teen moms have mental health problems. There are particular kinds of stresses that come with being a young mother, but they're not exclusive, again, to age. So we always say, try and find out the story of this woman, this pregnancy, this time. You may also see the potential concerns such as family history of mood problems and a higher risk for postpartum depression. But you can often come at the problem as a self-care and promotion opportunity rather than saying, oh, you're going to really have trouble here because your grandmother was hospitalized and you have these other problems in the family with alcoholism and with your mom's panic. Sometimes, again, if it's the first time it's been raised with that teen, she may retreat around that rather than see the opportunity that she has to really bolster her wellness and really work towards a good outcome for her and her baby. Some other resources that we would draw your attention to are the website teenmentalhealth.org. This is a general teen mental health resource developed also at our center by another team. It's not specifically addressing pregnancy, but it is a well-developed site with a wealth of links and other interactive kinds of resources that the team can have a look at, or that may help you in thinking about how to approach your young mothers. The other resource we draw your attention to is a book by Dr. Bethany Kazarjan called Power Source Parenting, Growing Up Strong and Raising Healthy Kids. We're really enthusiastic about this particular resource. It was developed for high-risk teen parents, and a facilitator's manual was also developed a few years later in 2011. This is available through this therapeutic group's own publishing house called Lionheart Press in Boston, Massachusetts in the United States, and we encourage you to have a look at it. Again, it's not a whole program. You might find some parts of it more applicable than others to your particular setting. Thanks for your interest in meeting our mom, and thanks for your work every day as a community support provider for mothers and young families.